No, seriously. Are you truly alive? Or are you just breathing? No, this isn't some cheap rhetorical question to start another philosophical video. This is the most brutal question you can ask yourself right now. And it comes from a man who lived over 2,500 years ago, but who saw something about the human condition that still cuts us like a sharp blade today. Pythagoras, yes, the same one from the triangles, looked at the crowds of his time and made a devastating observation. Most of the people he saw walking through the streets, talking in the squares, living their daily routines, were already dead. They just didn't know it yet. And before you think this is just another ancient reflection, without relevance, let me tell you something that will disturb you. You're probably among those people. I probably am. Most of humanity is. We live in an era where 8 billion people breathe simultaneously on this planet. But how many of them are truly alive? How many are experiencing life in its fullness, in its real intensity, in its authentic depth? Pythagoras wasn't speaking metaphysically. He was making a clinical, surgical observation about what it means to be alive versus existing. And this distinction between living and existing is perhaps the most important one you can make in your life. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The life you're living right now, in this moment, might just be an elaborate simulation of life, a convincing performance of existence, a well-rehearsed theater where you are simultaneously the actor and the spectator, but never the director. You wake up, grab your phone, infinite scroll, artificial dopamine, notifications that make you feel important for 3 seconds. You eat without tasting, work without purpose, talk without connecting, sleep without resting, and repeat, and repeat, and repeat. Is this life, or is this death in slow motion, death by 1,000 small distractions, death by existential suffocation? Pythagoras looked at this mechanical repetition, at this absence of consciousness, at this life on autopilot, and saw walking corpses, people who had lost the ability to be surprised, to question, to truly feel. And he was right. But what does it mean to be truly alive, according to Pythagoras? And why is this question even more urgent today than it was in ancient Greece? For Pythagoras, authentic life begins with the awakening of consciousness, not superficial consciousness. I know I exist. I know my name. I know where I am. But deep consciousness, consciousness that penetrates the nature of reality and our place in it. He believed that most people live in a state he called the sleep of the soul, a state where you function, where you respond to stimuli, where you execute tasks, but where your deepest essence is asleep, anesthetized, dead. And here's where it gets scary. Look around you today. Look at people on public transport, all with their eyes glued to screens. Look at family dinners where each person is in their own digital world. Look at crowds walking through the streets, each one lost in their own mental labyrinth of anxieties, expectations, and distractions. Pythagoras would see this as an epidemic of spiritual death, a pandemic of unconsciousness. But let's go deeper. Why does this happen? Why is it so easy to slide into this state of death life? First, because true consciousness hurts. It demands that you confront uncomfortable truths about yourself, about the world, about the nature of existence. It's easier to live on the surface, where questions are simple and answers are comforting. Second, because our society is structured to keep you in this state. Think about it. A truly conscious person, truly alive, is a dangerous person to systems that depend on conformity and passive consumption. A person who questions deeply, doesn't buy things they don't need, doesn't accept authorities without questioning, doesn't settle for superficial explanations. Third, and perhaps most importantly, Because truly awakening means taking total responsibility for your life. And that's terrifying. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, expanded on this Pythagorean idea in a brutal way. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. He looked at people and saw entire lives being thrown away in small daily increments. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his Meditations, made an even more cutting observation. How many who have been praised by many are forgotten, and how many who praised others have long since departed. He saw the futility of a life lived only on the surface, seeking external approval and temporary pleasures. But here's what these philosophers understood, and what Pythagoras intuited. Spiritual death is not a single event. It's a gradual process. You don't wake up one day dead inside. You die a little each time you choose comfort over growth. A little each time you avoid a difficult conversation. A little each time you accept a convenient lie instead of an uncomfortable truth. And in our age, this process is exponentially accelerated. We live in an era of industrial distraction. Algorithms designed by some of the brightest minds in the world to capture and monetize your attention. Social networks that turn your life into a constant performance. 24/7 news that keeps you in a perpetual state of anxiety and outrage. All of this conspires to keep you on the surface, to keep you distracted, to keep you spiritually dead, while your body continues functioning. So, how do you know if you're truly alive or just breathing? How do you recognize if you're one of the people Pythagoras would see as a walking corpse? Here are the brutally honest signs. First, you live on autopilot. Your days blur into each other. You can't remember what you ate for lunch the day before yesterday because you weren't present while eating. You drive to work without remembering the trip. You have entire conversations without really hearing what the other person is saying. This is death. This is existing without living. Second, you avoid silence and solitude at all costs. The moment you're alone with your thoughts, you grab your phone, turn on the TV, put on music, anything to fill the void. Why? Because in silence, in solitude, you confront who you really are. And if you're spiritually dead, this confrontation is unbearable. Third, you always live in the future or the past, never in the present. You're always waiting for the next weekend, the next vacation, the next promotion, the next relationship. Or you're trapped in regrets from the past, in how things used to be better, in missed opportunities. The present, the only moment where life actually happens, becomes just an uncomfortable transition space between an idealized past and a promised future. Fourth, you constantly seek external validation. Your self-esteem depends on likes, comments, approval from others. You don't have a solid internal center, your own moral compass, a sense of worth that comes from within. This is death because it means you don't exist as an autonomous individual. You're just a reflection of other people's expectations and opinions. Fifth, you avoid deep questions about meaning, purpose, and the nature of existence. These questions make you feel uncomfortable, so you push them away with jokes, cynicism, or simply changing the subject. But here's the truth. Pythagoras understood. These questions aren't philosophical luxuries for people with free time. They are the most practical and urgent questions you can ask. Because without answers to them, even if they're provisional and evolving answers, you're living a life that isn't yours. Now, let's look at the other side. What is a truly alive person like according to Pythagorean criteria? A living person questions everything, not in a cynical or destructive way, but in a curious and courageous way. They question their own beliefs, their motivations, their habits. They question social structures, authorities, truths accepted without examination. A living person is present. They savor the food they eat. They truly listen when someone speaks. They feel the emotions that arise, without immediately trying to escape or fix them. A living person has a purpose that transcends the ego. They're not just trying to accumulate pleasures, status, or security for themselves. They're engaged in something greater, something that gives meaning and direction to their existence. A living person is not afraid of death, not because they're brave or reckless, but because they understand that an unlived life is a far worse form of death than physical death. And here's the cruel paradox of our age. We have more tools to awaken consciousness than any previous generation. We have instant access to the wisdom of all the philosophers, mystics, and thinkers in history. We have technologies that can connect us to each other in unimaginable ways. But we use these same tools to keep ourselves sleeping. We use the internet to escape reality instead of exploring its depth. We use social networks to create false personas instead of developing our authenticity. We use infinite entertainment to avoid confronting fundamental existential questions. So, what to do? How do you get out of this state of death life? How do you resurrect your own soul? Pythagoras had an answer, and it wasn't gentle or comforting. He believed that awakening requires a radical break from habitual patterns of existence. First, embrace existential discomfort. Stop running from difficult questions. Sit in silence and confront who you really are, not who you pretend to be. This will hurt. This will scare. This will reveal truths about you that you'd rather not see. But it's the only path to authentic life. Second, ruthlessly cut everything that keeps you sleeping. This might mean less social media, less passive entertainment, less superficial conversations, fewer activities that are just ways to kill time. It might mean disappointing people who are used to the sleeping version of you. Third, cultivate practices that increase consciousness. Meditation, yes, but not just sitting in silence. Meditation as an active investigation into the nature of mind and reality. Journaling that goes beyond "how was my day" to "why do I exist?" Reading philosophy not as intellectual entertainment, but as a laboratory to experiment with different ways of seeing the world. Fourth, accept total responsibility for your life. Stop blaming circumstances, other people, society, your education, your past. Recognize that even if you're not responsible for everything that happened to you, you are 100% responsible for how you respond to it. Fifth, live as if you were going to die tomorrow, but also as if you were going to live forever. The first gives you urgency and intensity. The second gives you perspective and long-term purpose. But here's the final warning, the most difficult truth of all. Awakening to authentic life is not a single event. It's a choice you have to make repeatedly, every day, sometimes every moment. Because the forces that keep you sleeping, internal and external, never stop operating. Every day you wake up, you'll have to choose again between the easy life and the real life, between the comfort of unconsciousness and the intensity of total presence, between being another breathing body or being a truly living soul. And most people, even when they get a glimpse of awakening, choose to go back to sleep. Because it's easier, because it's safer, because it's what everyone else is doing. But you don't have to be like everyone else. Pythagoras looked at crowds and saw walking dead, but he also knew that each individual had the potential to awaken. Each person, though, had the spark of divine consciousness within them, just waiting to be activated. The question isn't whether you have this potential. You do. The question is, are you going to do something with it? Because here's the final truth. Brutal and liberating. You're going to die physically anyway. That's certain. But dying spiritually, that's a choice. You can spend the next 20, 30, 50 years of your life just breathing, or you can start truly living. You can be another one in the crowd of walking corpses that Pythagoras observed, or you can be one of the rare people who awaken to life in its fullness. The choice is yours, and it starts now. Not tomorrow, not next Monday, not when you graduate, or get married, or retire. Now. So I ask again, and this time I want you to answer honestly to yourself. Are you alive? Or are you just breathing?